When it comes to the economy right now, I'm seeing it real time myself. For those of you who don't know, I actually work at a grocery store right now. And food is so much more expensive. Your dollar doesn't go as far. Where back in 2020, I remember you can get a decent amount of groceries for $100, $200. Now it seems like that's been cut in half.
Oh, I have $200,000, $300,000. This should be enough to get a house, right? And you go to a house and they laugh in your face and say, no, the least we'll take is 50 or 500. I was thinking about it the other day. It's like the stock market with the gas. Like, you have to get it when it's at a good price, because if you wait one day, it'll go up like 50 cents. It's just so crazy to me. I never lived like this before. You have to get to it really quick.
I think it affects the church, with just again, like what we were just talking about earlier, when people are not spending more, right, less people are gonna want to help out. And as we know, you should always be willing to help out your church, help out your community. But the reality is, when you have a household and you have a wife or you have a husband, you have kids to take care of, you want to sustain your household first. And I truly believe people do want to help, others in need and help the community. But when we are very tight on money, right, it's harder for our flesh, it's harder for us to want to give an extended hand.
Whatever belongs to Caesar, we give it to Caesar, but whatever belongs to God first.
Exactly.
Welcome everyone to the XPerience podcast. We are in the war room right now. You know why? Because for the next 3 weeks, we are going to be discussing politics. And not the kind of politics you think. But before we get started, make sure you like, subscribe, and share the content. We are inching closer to our 150 subscriber mark. We're going to be giving away some swell merch at that point. We also have a giveaway of XPerience Podcast merch at 200, and as well as a giveaway at 250, a big giveaway that we haven't yet to release. But before we begin, we're going to go ahead and we're going to introduce our guests. To my left, I'm assuming you're right, we have Darryl here, who's going to be joining the podcast today. And then I have a very special friend of mine. You may have seen him on YouTube, but I knew him longer than that. He actually served in the youth ministry for a very, very long time. But please, everybody, give it up for Mr. Adam. How you doing, my guy?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Before we get completely started, if you want to share a little bit about your YouTube channel and what you got going on there.
So my YouTube channel is Respawn, RESPOHN, my last name. Obviously, it Respawn. So I've been just been building up a community over there. Go ahead and check it out after this video. I'm sure my channel will be in the description. But with me, I'm just reacting to stuff, silly stuff I see on the internet or politics. And of course, today we're talking about politics. My base is slowly growing. And for surely, I'm going to make something out of it. So, I'm just doing what I got to do. So,
man, make sure you go out, check out his channel if you haven't yet before. If you like silly content, you like to talk about politics, make sure you go check it out. Please support my man here. He's doing something big. He's doing something great over there. But let's go ahead and let's dive into today's subject. So what we're going to do today is we're not going to identify our political standing. That's not what we're doing here. What we're going to do today is that we're going to have conversations based off of 3 key issues that are happening in America that are ultimately going to decide who's going to be the winner. Is it going to be Kamala or is it going to be Trump? But at the same time, we want to also bring this from a church standpoint. Where does the church stand when it comes to this? Because relatively speaking, according to the statistics, typically the church or Christian faith are the least likely to go out and vote. Obviously, I believe 2020 was an anomaly because of the circumstances that we were in. Everybody was cooped up at home. It drove everybody insane, and everybody felt like they needed to vote in order for change to happen. That's just the reality. So whoever you voted for somebody because of the nature of the circumstances that we were dealing with. Why? Because COVID ultimately impacted the church. When it was all said and done, everybody wanted to go back in person, but because of what was happening, it is what it is. So now we're kind of back to normality in a way. We're going to church, and it seems like that trend is starting to begin again, where it seems like the Christian voter is not necessarily getting out there. So what we want to do in this video is to be able to actually talk about these subjects in a manner in which you can understand and reasoning why it has such an impact. I think for the everyday person, the topics that we're talking about are on our minds. For some people, they may not be on your minds. You may not feel like you're impacted by it. But we're going to go ahead. We're going to talk about the big three. And today we're going to talk about the big one today. The number one on everybody's mind is the economy today.
Yeah.
I want you guys to share your thoughts or your opinions. Let's go ahead. Let's start with Darryl here. Why is the economy such an important subject today?
Wow, man, the economy, when it comes to us as a nation, it's always important because we all know the obvious, job opportunity, buying power for the public. If there is high inflation, people are not going to spend money. And when people are not spending money, the economy slows down. It's funny you mention this because this is actually something I'm actually trying to get a better understanding for and hopefully take a career in it. But from the obvious, again, yes. So when the economy's bad, there's less jobs to go around. People are not making as much. People are afraid to spend $1. And so it overall slows the economy down and money being moved around the economy.
No, I agree with you 100%. I think there is a sense of fear of where our money is going through. What are your thoughts, Adam?
So I think that the economy, it literally affects everybody. So no matter how rich or how poor you are, it's going to affect you in a way. So I kind of think about when this administration came in and they stopped the oil from coming through America. It's coming through a different source, a different country. And what happens is, as you guys may know, the cost of gas went up. So the cost of oil goes up. These big companies, like let's say Rayleigh's, they have to pay more for gas to ship their stuff over. Therefore, this would fall upon the customer. So the inflation, the economy, everything that's happening right now, it's affecting everybody. So this is a huge factor for just everybody who works.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think the reality is that we're all in different circumstances in life.
Right.
I think when we look at as a single man, though, for you looking at where the economy is at, obviously you have dreams and aspirations of where you want to be at economically.
Right.
And you see what's happening today. How does it make you feel, or what's going on through your mind as you're trying to really build up your life to where you want it to be?
How does it make me feel? It makes me feel kind of concerned. God works all things for good.
Yeah.
But and one thing I didn't explain before is when it comes to the economy right now, I'm seeing it real time myself. For those of you who don't know, I actually work at a grocery store right now, and food is so much more expensive. Your dollar doesn't go as far. Where back in 2020, I remember you can get a decent amount of groceries for $100, $200. Now it seems like that's been cut in half. And I'm seeing customers, and I'll tell you this one thing I never realized until I started working at a grocery store. I never realized how many people were on food stamps until I worked at a grocery store. I thought food stamps was like for people who are under a certain amount of income, in which that is for a lot of people. But it seems like everybody from all walks of life are just getting food stamps and cash aid and whatever other governmental programs are available. But back to your first point, yes, it is concerning where it's like I have to be very strategic about where my money is going, where I'm allocating my money. And it's tough because every time I get a check, most of that is just going towards just meeting the daily or the weekly expenses, and I can barely take anything for myself. And so one thing I'm learning, and I'm having God help me, is Lord, help me to invest this money, and of course, how to make more money. One thing I'm learning as I get older is in order to make money, you have to learn how to make more money. Investment's not the only route, and putting under your couch is not the best option. You have to actually park your money somewhere else.
I think you made a valid point. I think now with the circumstances we're in, that financial knowledge is more important now more than ever. Why? Because we see the struggle that's happening, and now we need to be able to have a proper financial game plan in order to really thrive in today's society.
Right.
Especially at the rate the things that were going on over the past 4 years, especially once COVID hit, it really changed the game as far as finances. If you didn't get in 2020 in investments, it almost felt like you were put on pause because of the nature that we were going through. You have any thoughts on that, Adam, especially in your circumstances?
So Well, I'd like to add on that. Financial knowledge is really good to have, especially nowadays with a lot of predatory people who may have a big platform. I'm going to use Logan Paul as an example. You know, he shilled out coins and said, "Hey, invest, and you're going to make all this money back." And then it was rug pulled by some criminals or something. Yeah. And now everybody's put hundreds of thousands of dollars into it, and they lost all of it. And you know, when you say that you should have that that mindset of when you walk into like, okay, I'm going to invest this money, you should know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it's really good to have just you just know what you're doing, you know. For me, like I'm a single dad. Inflation really hit me hard, especially like going to the store. Like I go to Sam's Club to get my food, and I've noticed that it's just a lot of shrinkflation. So what that is, if people don't know, it's when the price of the food is the same, but they take less out of it. So you'll get recently the Rice Krispie treats, right? I think I saw a video on it. This lady got the same box, and she opened it, and the bigger box had a little tiny bit of square, but then when you go to get a smaller box, it has like the regular size. So that's shrinkflation right there. And that really affects just going to like the grocery store. Like I said, gas, it's, you know, I remember before the pandemic and everything, gas was under like $3. You can put in gas and go pretty much anywhere, but now you have to kind of like think, okay, is this worth the gas?
It's a game now. Like you got to figure out like I'm gonna make sure like you literally have to find that gas station that's like that's the best. You know, some people have preference in gas. Obviously, I'm a person that likes quality gas, so I have to go to like a Shell or a Chevron or you know even a 76. I'll make an exception. I don't want to go to an Arco because I know Arco is cheap gas, but at the same time, I have to like find these spots in these neighborhoods. You know, luckily there's one right next to my house that's at a reasonable price, but you got to think about that. You got to make like your routing to make sure that you save a few dollars on gas, which is something that I feel like we as the American people shouldn't feel like we have to do at this point. And so breaking this down real quick, because the polls say that the economy is the number one issue. You personally, is the economy the number one issue?
It's tough to say, but it is a top 3 issues. There's so many issues with our nation right now, with our moral stances, our priorities when it comes to international affairs. But definitely, economy is up there, like top 3. So I don't know.
Why would you say that?
Because we all need. At the end of the day, we're all trying to make a buck, and we all need money to live comfortable lives and to do the things we want to do. And when you have a nation here in the West, in America, when you have people who can't spend money, or people have to budget more, people become fearful of where their money is going, and it's harder to really have the economy grow. And there's so much more behind that, where government is taking our tax dollars and putting into other things. But yeah, I know like with the gas whole situation, you know, gas is more expensive, you know, at least to I'm sorry guys, this is a fly over here, but at least to my advantage, riding a motorcycle, I do get a lot of gas mileage out of that, and I have to you're supposed to put 91 premium in any motorcycle, but that aside from that, yes, gas is more expensive, and just, you know, as much as I would like to ride a car and get back into a car, I'm like, you know what? I'm in no rush to get back in a car, just because I see, you know, just how the gas pricing of car and the pricing of car itself, and when insurance and rates aren't making payments on a car. So I'm very blessed in my circumstances.
Yeah, no, that I definitely agree with that. I mean, you got to touch a little bit on the gas issue. You know, and for you, I think you're a bit of a commuter in everyday life. So for you personally, what have you seen the changes in your finances? And I think I asked you the same question. For you personally, is the economy the number one issue on your mind when it comes to the person that you choose to vote?
Definitely.
Number one, with the hands down?
I just think it's just so, it's like when you're a younger person and you're, you know, finding success and like finding a good career, and then you go and you have, I have $200,000, $300,000. This should be enough to get a house, right? And you go to a house and they laugh in your face. They're saying, no, the least we'll take is 50 or 500. And you know, that's just, I look at my son. you know, like later on in life, he's going to get older. He's going to want to have, you know, wife, kids, and settle down. And it's just, you know, this inflation that we have right now, it's going to be generations for it to even go back down, because that's just how messed up the economy is right now.
Yeah.
Me personally, yeah, like I said, with gas is the number one thing. And it's funny, like, I was thinking about it the other day. It's like the stock market with the gas. Like, you have to get it when it's at a good price, because if you wait one day, it'll go up like 50 cents. It's just so crazy to me. I never lived like this before. You have to like get to it really quick.
Exactly.
But yeah, definitely with gas. You know, I think that's just the number one thing for me right now is, you know, I don't really have a lot of assets right now to really, like, you know, put that into perspective. But I know with people with houses, it's a good time to sell right now because it's extremely high. But unfortunately, you know what happened in 2000? Was it 2000?
2008 was a different story. It was because people and everybody, almost anybody with a pulse, was getting a loan, and then they wouldn't pay off on those loans, and then it caused a crash. And so because you had poor regulation with stupidity at the same time, that caused the crash.
Right.
Because, you know, these people were just handing out loans, the big banks would buy them, and the stock market was going up saying they were good, but ultimately it ended up crashing. Why? Because many people were not paying off on their loans and losing their homes and so on and so forth. So it created a huge crash. The regulation today is definitely better. The problem right now with the housing market is that it's no longer a buyer's nor a seller's market. It's only a renter's market. One, because interest rates are too high and prices are too high at the same time. So people now are waiting in the wings for one of the two to happen. One, either prices should drop significantly, indicating a recession, or two, to get the interest rates back down to the normal rate, which is typically about 5 to 5.5%. Everybody wants to be at that rate. I don't think we're going to get to that 4 like we did with COVID or anything like that.
Or the 2.
Or anything like that. But I think once we reach that point, then people will want to sell, and maybe the prices on houses will go up a little bit, but maybe people would be willing to do it.
Right.
Obviously, as a hopeful person, you would think you kind of want prices to also drop as well.
You do.
But that usually indicates that some kind of recession at some point. And obviously, all signs kind of indicating the way things have happened, especially with Powell dropping a 0.5 point, is kind of indicating that maybe in a way we're possibly in a recession, but we really don't know until we get out of it.
Yeah. And just, you made a great point, you know, how the economy is number one for you, and like I would say top 3 for me. And I just realized, I think because you have kids, you have sons, you have to support. Like me, I have no kids. So while finances is still important for both of us, now I'm thinking about it, like the different dynamics between people who have families, like you two guys have. You have kids, you have a wife, right? So
it's tough.
It's tough. While me being single, I have my own agency. While it is important, I'm not under that burden such as you gentlemen. And so I think that's pretty interesting. But what you said about like interest rates, right? With housing, like, you know, they said, like, I don't know the exact numbers, but they said like more than half of Americans can't afford a house anymore.
So let's look into that. Let's look into that stat, because I think this is real important. So when I bought my house, I bought it in a quarter of 2020. And I knew how the market was going, one, because of the movement that was happening in California.
Right.
Bay Area and SoCal people were moving up to NorCal because it was getting ridiculous. Number one, environment. Number two, pricing of homes for an environment that's not appealing anymore. San Francisco in 2013 was the greatest place to go to. Now it's corrupt, it's polluted, it's not a good place to raise a family.
Nasty too.
It's pretty nasty. Same thing with LA, 2013. You want to go to there. You want to live there. You want to build something there. Now it's not the case anymore, especially for above middle class to middle class people. So all of them are moving to NorCal, one, because jobs are a lot of jobs move to virtual. And so you can go ahead, you can work in Northern California, your SoCal job. And then on top of that, they can afford the housing. Why? Because they were able to afford housing down there. And so what you saw at that time is that you saw a price jump because of the influx of people that were moving everywhere. And then Northern California people are moving to places places like Idaho, Texas,
Arizona,
South Dakota, Arizona. And so now their market is going up. Why? Because they're overspending for houses as well.
Exactly.
But in quarter 2020, an average house, it says right here, and this is from the Fred economic data, it is $396,900. In quarter 2 of 2024, because that's the recording we have, an average home is $501,700. We're talking about a 25% increase in homes alone.
And that's just one quarter.
And that is in 4 years.
4 years,
In 4 years, in quarter 2, that was the recorded data. And so, buying a home, and I feel for, like I said, I feel for you guys in specific, because I was able to get in right at the right time.
Right.
But at the same time, my living situation's a little bit different. I'm still looking for that space for me and my wife. I bought a family home. And that was something that we wanted to keep with the family, with my in-laws, and we wanted to go that route. But now we're playing the waiting game, mainly waiting on who's going to be in office, one, and what the policies are going to be when it comes to the economy that will impact housing. And so it leads us to that. And so we have all this data here that is really, really breaking this down. And so thinking about groceries, Yahoo Finance since November 2020, groceries came up on an average of 26%, but the biggest one was eggs. Eggs in November of 2020 was $1.45 a dozen.
It was like gold.
It was
time,
awesome.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
September 2024, $3.82 a dozen. In January of 2023, it was high as $4.82 a dozen. And to think about it, it leaves us into a place of investment. Because we are so much struggling focusing on what we have, it leaves us as Americans unable, especially middle-class people, lower middle-class people, to be able to go out and put ourselves in a position to invest. Why? Because we're using every single resource we have just to simply survive in the circumstances that we have. And so really breaking this down accordingly, average price of cars, March of 2020, $38,210. In July of 2024, $49,673. 25% again. But according to Statistica, the median income of household, 2019, $81,210. 2023, $80,610. It dropped.
Right.
And then on top of that, you had this period of time where wage increase was being defeated by inflation from 2021 all the way into 2023. I think it was mid.
Right.
And so you have all these perspectives, and it's not the fact that inflation is high right now. It's the fact that the inflation we had literally crushed us, and now we're just trying to recuperate, and now it's finally down to a means where we can finally be able to do that.
Right.
But now my question for you, gents, is what would be the solution to this? What would be the place for you, in your own personal opinion? Where would you feel comfortable, or like, what would savings look like for you, or what would be your game plan in the next year? What would your dreams be in the next year when you talk about your financial goals?
You want to start this one, Adam?
Oh, you go ahead.
So for me, well, in a perfect world, it'd be great if we could get rid of the U.S. debt, but that's not going to happen. But I think what will work for me moving forward, next year, and to really get into a better place financially, is keep investing and have a solid portfolio in your investments. You, as I said, pun not intended, but you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right? Uh-huh. And the thing is, now it is so much easier to invest now more than ever, how it was 20, 30 years ago, where you can download apps and you can have online investments, real estate, online stocks investments, ETFs, Roth IRA. That's a big one, Roth IRA. And Robinhood. And all these other platforms and stock market. Crypto's good too. Put a little bit in there. And from what I've learned,
what I would highly encourage? Take all your money out of your regular savings account and put it into a high yield.
High yield, exactly. Yeah.
And the reason why I recommend that, and this is something, hi, babe, I love you. My wife really dive into this, is that in the end of the day, inflation never stops. As long as we continue to print money, as long as we continue to do these things as a nation, inflation will never stop.
Right.
So the only way that you can beat inflation is throwing your money into something that is going to gain interest. High yield savings will be able to meet or defeat that purpose.
Exactly.
Because think about it. If you continue to keep your money in your savings, your $100 just became $96 at the end of the year.
Yep.
You were actually technically losing money. So you have to learn to be able to maintain that money into something.
Yeah.
You should have an emergency fund and keep like a $10,000 in a savings in case of an emergency. But everything else, bam.
Yeah.
Throw it into a high yield savings. Make sure that you continue to do that. Obviously, my wife was a big Ramsey guy.
Yeah.
I didn't really listen to stuff, but I listened to her. I'm like, it sounds good.
Right. And another thing is and I'm telling to anybody who's watching this, if you're young and you want to get yourself financially established, never, and I think these guys can agree with me, never be in debt.
Yeah.
Never be in any credit card debt, car loan debt. What I've seen, and people are becoming more financially illiterate now, but what I used to see years ago was people were driving up their credit cards. People were getting cars they couldn't afford. It's like, that's when it comes to having your priorities in the right place financially, where like people get like these $80,000 cars, Mercedes-Benz, BMWs, who couldn't afford because, it's the flex or just saying like, oh, I got this nice car. But it's like, but then they realize like the payments on these cars now are it's $800 a month, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, people get their car repossessed. Unfortunately, my car's, I'm be honest with you guys, my car's about to get repossessed. Thank God it's only $8,000, but still like that's debt I don't want at all. And so I got to work something out to get that paid off. And, and if you're someone who's young, don't worry about getting all the material things right now in your life, especially if you're like in your early 20s, mid 20s, even 30s. Invest every dollar you can. Don't worry about getting all the fancy things and blowing up every paycheck. I know when you're young, you want to spend your paycheck right away. You could treat yourself here and there, but I would say invest. The safe. Go aggressive, as they say if you're young. Go aggressive. When I was saying earlier, stocks, real estate. Even gold, get into gold, a little bit in crypto, not a lot, but you want to do a little bit of crypto. Have your a diverse portfolio, ETFs, high yield savings accounts. They have, I think it's called Ally Bank now. I think it's called where it's like a 4.5 or something return.
So that's what I have. I have an Ally Bank, and now it's currently at a 4.5, and that's the key right there.
Exactly.
You want to be able to defeat inflation. The only way that you can defeat inflation, and I'm talking to everybody, is being able to make sure that your money is continually to value.
Exactly.
Not because you're gaining more money, but because your money is not going to devalue, and then allow the money to work for yourself. Adam, do you have any, like, as far as for you, your financial game plans, what that looks like in hopes that the economy would get better?
Well, you guys answered it very well. I could just add a little something to it. Me personally, what I think just for everybody, especially young people, because I see a lot of TikToks online about people complaining about, it's really hard to get a job, it's hard to get a place. You have to make astronomical amount of money to get it, and they're like, oh, I didn't know about this, it sucks, the boomers did this and whatnot. Like for me, it's like get better. Like if stuff gets more expensive, try to find a job that pays more. You can't have a victim mentality of like, this is not fair, I'm never gonna move up. And then you just gotta evolve, and you gotta have a game plan with, okay, this is 20% more than it was a couple years ago. I gotta have to make 20% more. Yeah. That's it.
No, we have to get to a place where we'll be able to make smart choices on our ends. But then it comes back to the question about inflation and how do we get that under control? And from the political side, because at the end of the day, it does impact us heavily. I would say this year, I've seen it more impactful in comparison to when it was actually higher, because of the nature of what we're dealing with. Incomes are not necessarily going up. The prices of everything are going way up. And so you have to look at it from that perspective. But when it's all said and done, the cause of inflation is actually quite interesting. MIT Sloan actually did some data on this, and many people think it's just the prices in those grocery stores. I kid you not. The reason why the inflation is high, majority of it has to do with government spending. It's government spending.
I was just going to say the same thing. Yep.
The results show that 42% of inflation could be attributed to government spending. Allah, because of the wars and the international affairs, which will be something that we'll discuss on another podcast. 17% could be attributed to inflation expectations. That is the rate at which consumer expected prices continue to increase. 14% could be blamed to the higher interest rates, which has been addressed by Powell in a way, but we're still not where we're at, what we want to be at today. So with all that being said, I know we did a lot of intellectual talk and everything. So let's dive into this. Does this affect the church? Does the economy affect the church?
I think it does.
Why?
I think it affects the church, with just again, like what we were just talking about earlier, when people are not spending more, right, less people are going to want to help out. And as we know, you should always be willing to help out your church, help out your community. But the reality is when you have a household and you have a wife or you have a husband, you have kids to take care of, you want to sustain your household first. And I truly believe people do want to help, others in need and help the community. But when we are very tight on money, right? It's harder for our flesh. It's harder for us to want to give an extended hand. And so when our economy is in turmoil financially, people are not going to want to go to church because, again, gas, travel, people are not going to want to put into tithes, offering.
It's kind of a weird thing to see, but that's a legitimate reason at time. There was a point, and I think when the inflation was high and it really impacted people in 2023 specifically, I would have parents tell me, hey, I would love to bring my kids to youth, but I have to choose one day because the gas right now is just so ridiculous. Have you ever felt that? Have you ever felt that before?
Oh, yeah. I felt that.
Oh man. So it's kind of crazy to think about it. But I don't know, Adam, do you have any input on this?
Well, that's a good point right there with the gas. People don't have enough money to come to church, especially for me, it's like a 40-minute drive, 35 if there's no traffic. So,
amen, man.
But exactly
on that.
Right.
Yeah, you live a little bit further.
Yeah.
No, I'm like a 45-minute, with traffic and stuff. It's mainly the traffic, not necessarily travel, but it's definitely the traffic that hits in, especially because more people are moving to my area. Before it wasn't like that.
Have you guys heard? And now again, I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard there's been talks about with electric cars, e-cars, right? They want to tax that now because everyone's going to EVs, right?
Yeah.
And because gas was so high and the cost of getting gas and travel. And now they're talking about we're going to tax EV. And I don't know if that's just here in California. People are just throwing their hands up are you serious? The whole reason why we're going to EVs is because of gas, prices.
Well, it's not because of gas prices. It's because there was a mandate already assembled in California, and I work in the car industry, that we want EVs by 2035, which I work in the car industry. I don't think that's a smart idea because there's one specific vehicle that cannot be replaced by EVs, and that is diesel. The workman truck.
Yep.
You're not going to get the same power. People that travel with their Teslas have to charge the vehicle 3 times just to get to LA.
Exactly.
And so imagine a work truck that has to haul 10,000, 15,000 pounds across the country.
Yeah.
So you can't replace diesel.
You can't.
So I don't know if that mandate will fall through. But I do believe there is a space for electric vehicles, especially local drivers, inner city, stuck in traffic. You won't always gas because you just simply say, there is a market for that.
I think so. I truly
believe and what you're talking about, the EV, I looked into a little bit on it. So what they're trying to do is because people have electric cars, they're not buying gas, so the government's not getting their taxes from gas. So that's why our gas taxes are so high, because we buy gas. They get the money to apparently fix the roads. I don't really know what they do with it, but to fix the roads. So they're trying to just be like, okay, well, we got to make some money somehow. So now we're going to start tallying the miles on your car.
Right.
But even then, it's you can still get away with it too. They're not going to trot out every car and look in there and make sure it's the right thing, because that would take too much manpower. So honestly, I just think it's unrealistic. If they try to pass it, it's I don't think I just don't see how they're going to control that. You know what I mean?
Well,
So-
no, and you got to think about it from this perspective. So the economy in itself, the way it's naturally, number one, you have to be able to have the power. You have to be able to have the grid to do it. You got to be able to have the space to be able to charge up these vehicles. So that's very expensive.
It
in
takes
itself.
hours.
Number two, I think we've seen this example in Europe. Once these vehicles are down, it literally becomes a swamp field. It literally becomes a place of just vehicles that are of no use. Number three, the economy in regards to jobs. Jobs will begin to be diminished. Jobs will be decimated in the workspace of a mechanic because you're not creating mechanics anymore. You're creating professional electricians.
Exactly.
And so you have that perspective in itself where all these people, especially older folks, who are going to have a hard time really working in this kind of environment.
Right.
While you may create a new wave of worker, you're also going to destroy a workforce.
A whole market,
A whole market of workforce in the process of that.
Right.
But talking about gas and everything I'm getting as far as the stats with pricing is from the U.S. Bureau of Statistics. So utility gas, November 2020, $1.10 per therm. In September 2024, $1.40 per therm, as high as $1.74 per therm in September of 2022 when inflation. Price of unleaded gas, the stuff that you put in your vehicle, $2.09 a gallon in November of 2020. September of 2024, $3.34 as high as $5.06 a gallon in June of 2022 nationwide. And so power, resources, and with median income slightly decreasing, that is a very concern, and that's the reason why that the economy is such a big subject. But let's bring it back from the church perspective. Let's look at this. Because the most interesting statistics that I have found is that the rate of giving in comparison to inflation, so we don't compare it based off of how much dollar you give, but how much the value of the dollar is based off of inflation. Our giving actually has gone down since 2021 by 4.1%.
Wow.
Which is very, very interesting. And I think in regards to the economy and giving, I don't know if there was much of an impact because we went through a thing called COVID, but yet it seems like giving during COVID actually matched out in the rate in comparison to inflation and giving in 2024. So the stats in themselves in regards to the church and the economy, I think fall on the lines of two things. One, being able to maintain a church. And we're not talking about the small churches that already just gather at their homes and do all that. Why? Because they don't need the resources. They don't need the money. We're talking about these up-and-coming churches that maybe had church of 7, 8 years and have aspirations to be able to reach out to their community. Those are the ones that are going to get impacted the most.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are not going to be able to go out and reach these dreams. And at the same time, they're taking on all this risk at the wrong time.
Yeah.
And that in itself can lead to things like church foreclosure. It could lead to things where people lose their quote unquote their ministry jobs in the process because they have to make cuts in certain areas, and it becomes a very interesting environment for the church today. Mega churches are going to be okay. The smaller churches, they're going to be all right because they have that space. They have what they need at that time. But it's those churches in the middle, in the same way the middle class is affected. Those middle churches where they're trying to go to this next space or go to this next stage for their church or trying to take on these risks. Those are the ones that are going to ultimately end up getting impacted.
Yeah.
And so when I think about it, when it comes to the church, and then more importantly, the resources within the church, where are they going to go to now? Where are the cuts going to be made in certain ministries that may be important? That's another thing that you have to think about, because in the end of the day, people are going to give what they need to give. Another stat that it shows that on average, people only give about 2% of their income when it comes to the church, the everyday person. The majority of the people that, the 77% of the people that do give the 10% give more, which makes up for the giving portion of it. But a majority of people only give about 2% of their income. And so you got to think about it. If the economy is bad, what do you think that 2% drops down to? Sometimes nothing.
Nothing.
Sometimes it is, and
Some pocket change, maybe.
yeah, and that's the sad part, and why the economy heavily impacts us. But at the same time, I also have to be the person to say, as a church, we need to step up. Whatever belongs to Caesar, we give it to Caesar. But whatever belongs to God first.
Exactly.
what Jesus teaches us. And so we want to be able to give to our church. Why? Because we've reached a point in society where now the church is just a place to come gather and worship rather than come to a place where it becomes a resource for your community. And we want to be able to reach those places and be in that space, especially in churches that are in the middle of the hood like ours. We want to be able to get there, but we can't be able to accomplish those dreams without, or accomplish and be that church again without the giving from people, and that's just the reality of where we're at today. So, I've always set forward that making sure that we give what we need to give, even through thick and thin, no matter what. But I think we also want to reach a place now where even despite economic struggles, the church doesn't pay the price because of the financial decisions we make, whether we're doing good or whether we're doing bad. Yeah, and then on a spiritual level too, I think this, people struggle with their finances, and their faith may not be as strong, so they start wavering and even lose their faith because. The one thing you should know as a Christian is you can lose everything, but if you have Jesus, you can start over again. And some people don't see it like that. There's been times where I've been struggling and I would give tithes, and then somehow, some way, I would get more money somehow, like just out of the blue. Exactly. And it's not, the tithing is just for that, the financial gain. It's for a spiritual healing too. There's stuff that God may take out of your life, and you don't even realize it until later on when you think about it. And it's not just, okay, we're giving money to the church, that's cool, the church is going to run. But people forget that it benefits you as well, because you could be struggling financially, but if you don't tithe, that little bit of tithe that you give, God could have blessed that, and you could have got something else out of it, but you didn't want to because you don't have that faith to give. Right. No, it reaches a weird space, And like I said, in the midst of that, especially being in a ministry, where sometimes maybe the funds aren't there, and that's just the reality of the circumstances of what we live in, especially when the economy gets tough. What can I do as a service to make sure that I'm constantly, giving to my church and giving as much possible to the ministry that I'm serving in? And my expectation is people should do this, other people should do that. I'm like, no, just do it out of the goodness of your heart. Exactly. How do you know that God will not bless you out of it? How do you know that what you're doing is going to have a greater impact than keeping it in your pocket and hoping that you're saving up for a PS5? Yeah, you can give and give. Exactly. You can't outgive God. You cannot outgive Him. So, and I've seen it in my personal walk is when I give, it's like, Lord, I'm going to trust you in this, even though I'm I really don't, out of the kindness of your heart, it's like, Lord, I feel like I can't give this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Just being obedient to that is very important. And just a week later or a month later, oh, well, thank you, Lord, for blessing me. And it may not be directly money. It could be in just another blessing that could have had the attachment to money. Let's say if I give $100, right? God may not bless me indirectly later on with, $100, but He may bless me with something that would have been the price of that. And that's amazing how God works, is that He knows our needs, and He won't. And sometimes He knows that we can idolize money, so He won't give back the money itself. He won't bless us back the money itself, but He'll bless you with other things that may have had the value of the money attached to it. Yeah. And to keep that in mind, especially when we're talking about the subject of economy, it is a big thing. It does heavily impact us. But one thing about the economy that I will say is don't sacrifice your faith in the process of prosperity. Right. Prosperity in the gospel is beyond the riches that are on earth, but rather the riches in heaven. Yep. And so we have to think about that in the perspective of, as we're approaching this, it's why do you want to have a good economy? Exactly. Is it for your own self, or is it for your family to better them? Is it to give more to the church? We should have a different mentality when it comes to that. For me, it's an investment for a better future for my family. Exactly. No matter where I work or what I do, as long as I'm doing it legally, as long as I'm doing it legally and with a good heart and good intentions, I don't care where the money comes from. Exactly. I'll be in that space and I'll do it. But the one thing that I will not sacrifice in the process of that is my relationship with God, my relationship with my wife, my family, my kids, and my relationship and my calling into the youth ministry and my calling into doing ministry. I don't put my job occupation out on Facebook. I put my calling out there. I want people to know that when they see that, like, in the midst of that, I am not the person that manages at a dealership. No, I am the person that is called to be a pastor, that's called to go out and do great things. And I want to make sure that the same thing with my finances is a reflection of that everything I do, that everything I represent. I want a great economy so I can go out and give more for my family, to give more to my students, to give more to the ministry, and to give more to the greater good. And so really reaching that mentality and really going after that when we reach this point in time. So any final thoughts before we actually get out of here? Anything you guys want to share?
You know, there's a lot of fear going on with like the election and stuff. You know, people are like, this is the last election, even both sides. And it's like, it's not the end of it. It's going to get, you know, whoever wins, it might get a little bit harder. But, you know, I think about like the prophets in the Bible. Like, you know, just seriously, like open the Bible, you know. There's a lot of prophets that went through literally hell and back, and they came out on top, especially when, you know, Job, that's the common one. But I think about Paul sometimes, you know, he was set, he had everything, and then he left it all to follow God, and he went through all these, you know, read the New Testament, all this jailed. And, you know, when we're struggling and you have, you know, your faith is wavering, just think about what Jesus did for us on the cross, you know. He was a perfect man that did no wrong and died for our sins and came back 3 days later. And that's just the greatest gift of all. And just knowing that and accepting him into your heart, you can go through anything. You can lose everything. And if you still have the Holy Spirit living within you, you can get through it. Amen. So that's my final thoughts about
Perfect. that. Perfect. Darryl, you got anything?
Yeah. I mean, despite all these concerning things we talked about with the economy, I truly believe that things will turn around for the better. I think us as a community, as a nation, things will turn around. If you're going through it financially with your circumstances, your challenges, just hang on in there. Keep fighting the good fight. Keep running the race. Keep continuing to trust God in your finances, because it will get better. I think that our nation is waking up to the wisdom that we need. Proper leadership in the office. We need to be discerning. We need to be more wise on how we move around and how we invest our money and where we allocate our money. And so I just want to encourage anybody watching this that whether you're young and you're not sure how to invest your money, and whether you're someone who's in the latter years and you may be in debt, keep using heavenly kingdom wisdom. And God will see you through it. That He will make sure that you're going to be okay. And it says that in Psalms it says that King David says is like, I have never seen God's righteous people begging for bread. I'm paraphrasing that scripture, but it's something like that. And so I know that we're going to be okay in the long run. It's tough right now, but we're going to be all right.
Yeah. Long story short, let's just keep it simple here. Our vote, based off of whatever we do or whatever decision we make politically, you always want to make sure that it's in alignment with God. More importantly, especially when it comes to the issues that we're talking about, especially specifically economy, because I wouldn't consider it necessarily a biblical concern. But at the same time, we need to reach a space and we need to reach a point where we're actually doing our research in regards to who we're putting in office. In the end of the day, the power is in our hands. And if you're not doing yourself the justice to be able to take the time and listen to the information or read the information or open up the stats from the Bureau of Statistics to be able to see where the economy is at, to understand the policies that are in place, and you're expecting one news network to spoon feed you, that's all the information that you're going to get. And if the more that you continue to attract to that and you don't want to listen to the other side or the in-between, you're not going to be able to go out and help yourself. But more importantly, in the discussions of this, that you hold on to your faith no matter what. Your faith, your values conquers everything. And then everything else, you make a decision from there. So I want to continue to encourage everyone, especially since we're getting closer to times of voting, especially anybody that's 18 and older. And if you're younger and you're watching this and you're listening to everything that we're saying here today, I want you as well to begin to train your mind to come to a space where you begin to understand exactly where you stand in your walk with Christ and exactly what are you voting for and specifically. You know, there are too many issues out in the world and there are too many stances. Economy is just one thing that we're talking about over the next 3 weeks. We got plenty more to discuss. But at the end of the day, we're not here to sway or do anything like that. We're just simply here to have a discussion and give you the facts. And so that's all we want to do here. Then more importantly, we want to center around Christ and who he is and remind ourselves that in the end of the day, God is reigning.
Amen.
He is still on the throne. And no matter what happens, we still have faith. But let's not get desperate in the times in which we need to be able to do something and make emotional decisions, rather make rational decisions of what you think is best for the kingdom of God, for your family, and for others. So we're gonna get out of here, guys. It was a great conversation.
Thank you for having me on. I
thank
really
you.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
No, man,
appreciate it.
we'll make sure that we continue to bring this on. In the end of the day, we are a community. That's what we love to do here. If you guys haven't already, make sure you like, subscribe, and share. We're getting closer to that giveaway. And next week, we're going to talk about topic number 2 as we bring on a few more guests in this war room. We love you. God bless you. And I hope that this was an experience for you. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.